Alright, folks. Testing. I'm streaming via a new platform for the first time, so let's see whether it works. Trying to stream simultaneously in two different platforms like Facebook and YouTube at once, so let's see how it goes. Am I live? No, I am not. I'm not live on Facebook yet, it seems. Okay. What about YouTube? It seems I'm live on YouTube. Right? Okay, I am. So YouTube is fine, but Facebook, am I live? Like, something is not working with Facebook, it seems. Just give me a minute, guys. Okay. Am I live as an individual? No, I'm not. So let's see what's happening to Facebook here. Okay, it says connected, but where am I live actually? I can't see it yet. I'm not live on Facebook. Why is that so? Don't understand. Oh, am I? Oh no, this is YouTube and here is Facebook. Okay, so the topic is the collapse of the USSR. Yes, some vocab on historical and political topics. Yes. Okay. So let's hope we are live, and let's hope it works. Yes. Okay. So there, I've been watching some documentaries on this topic, and I thought maybe I could share some of it with you. Let me pick the one. Yeah, this one is good enough. Let's see.
They were thinking about leaving communism. And as so often happens with the fall of empires, the trouble started at its fringes. Up until this point, everything had seemed relatively calm in the Soviet Union and its allies. People were gaining more freedoms. The government was actively trying to improve the prosperity of its citizens, and it appeared that a Cold War might actually end. There was a general feeling of hopefulness at this time. But then revolutions started popping up. The first was in Poland in 1988.
So Poland, 1988.
The collapse of the Soviet Union marked the end of Soviet-style communism and the beginning of a new freedoms. Glasnost also included political reform. The new Soviet leadership wanted a democratic Soviet Union. They did not believe that a communist country cannot also be a democratic country. In fact, many believed that the two were complementary, because if you need to answer to the will of the people every few years, then leaders would be held accountable for their actions to the same people they were ostensibly there to govern. And it is important to remember that the people of the Soviet Union and its communist allies.
So, yes, I'll make it slower, okay, to begin with. Let's slow down the playback speed. And from time to time, I'll pause to give you some synonyms, okay? So it's a good way of learning something new. I mean synonyms, right? And you'll need them during your exams if you are planning to pass some of them, like TOEFL, IELTS. Yes, so let's go back.
For their actions to the same people they were ostensibly there to govern. And it is important to remember that the people of the Soviet Union and its communist allies were neither blind nor stupid. They were aware that they were being lied to. They saw that the propaganda they were shown conflicted with the reality of what they saw with their own eyes. But what they did not know was just how much they were being lied to. Until now. Because as glasnost flourished, people became...
So to flourish, for instance, here's a synonym. To flourish is to prosper, for instance. During those exams, actually, you may have the word, say, flourish in the text, and in the question you'll have a synonym, say, prosper, right? So let's see whether we can see this text correctly, or is it mirroring? All right, let's just give me a minute. Oh, hopefully it's fine, yeah? Okay.
more and more aware of the conditions in their country, while at the same time...
See, in this context, conditions, the conditions in their country. We can also talk about the situation in the country, right? So these are very close synonyms in this context. Conditions. Of course, every word, including conditions and situation, can have their own nuances. However, generally, in general, they can replace each other in some contexts.
Allowed to criticize the government more and more. It was hoped that glasnost would spark a
to
renewal.
criticize, how could you define that? For instance, to say some unpleasant or negative things about the government. Yes. Also, because during the exams you will have you will be asked to evaluate entire phrases or sometimes even paragraphs. So it's not just about synonyms. Okay.
In communist thinking, but instead, the combination of worsening living standards and greater freedom to criticize meant that people weren't thinking about improving communism, they were thinking...
The combination, for instance, the combination, one synonym could be the mix, yes, the mix of some different components or parts.
About leaving communism. And as so often happens with the fall of empires, the trouble started at its fringes. Up until this point, everything had...
Oh, the fringes. The fringes, that's a word that you can meet, you can have during your exams. Fringe or fringes, yes? In this case, that could be suburbs or borders, like the parts which are far away from the central part. Yes, fringes. So let's say almost borders, or suburbs, far or areas, yeah, areas far from the center, yes, center, yeah.
Relatively calm in the Soviet Union and its allies. People were gaining more freedoms. The government was actively trying to improve the prosperity of its citizens, and it appeared that a Cold War might actually end. There was a general feeling of hopefulness at this time. But then revolutions started popping up. The first was in Poland in 1988, when people began protesting for workers' rights, such as legalizing trade unions. These trade
To legalize, of course, I think probably a lot of people know this term, right? But for the learners of English, maybe this might be problematic. To legalize is to make legal. Yes, when something is illegal, it's against the law. You cannot do that. Yes, for instance, pornography is legal in some countries and it is illegal in other countries. Also, weed or marijuana or even alcohol. In some countries, it's illegal to drink alcohol, like in some conservative Muslim countries, right?
unions then managed to bargain with the government to get freer elections in
To
Poland.
bargain is like to negotiate. Yes. To bargain is to negotiate and come to some agreement. Yes, to negotiate. To negotiate. Let's say, try to come to some agreement. You are bargaining when you're trying to lower the price or to get something a bit more. Yes.
And as non-communist parties were now allowed to compete in elections, the trade unionists formed their own party.
Well, elections, that's a word everyone should know. Some of my learners don't, so, well, it's fine if the level of English is very low. So to elect is to vote. Yes, election is the same as voting, right? You elect a president. In some places you elect members of parliament, right?
Competed and won the election on August 19th, 1989, giving Poland its first non-communist government since World War II. The most important thing that the Soviet Union did during this Polish Revolution, however, was nothing. This wasn't the first time a Soviet satellite state underwent a revolution.
Satellite state, that's an interesting expression in terms of politics. A satellite state, like it's the state that belongs, or a base. Satellite state. It's a state that belongs or is controlled, belongs to or is controlled by a bigger state. Yes, for instance, today Armenia is considered to be a satellite state because it depends heavily on Russia. Yes, considering all the problems and issues. And before the Euromaidan, the Ukrainian Republic was considered to be a satellite state. The president was a crony or a very good friend of Mr. Putin. Yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting term, satellite state.
1953, the Soviets put down protests in East Germany. In 1956, Hungary's revolution.
So to put down a protest, that's an interesting expression. To put down is like to oppress, yes, to suppress, I'd say, to end, yes, or in a more literary term, to extinguish. You extinguish a fire when there's a lot of fire, you extinguish it with water, or you can extinguish a revolution. Or You can put it down. Yes, you can suppress it by force, by guns.
Was crushed by Soviet forces. And in 1968, the Soviet Union, along with 4 other Warsaw Pact countries, invaded Czechoslovakia because they were becoming too liberal.
To invade is to enter the territory of another country. Yes. For instance, when officially Nagorno-Karabakh belonged to Azerbaijan, Armenians, or we can take other territories like surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh, they were invaded by Armenian soldiers. Or after this third Nagorno-Karabakh war in South Caucasus, now Azerbaijani forces invaded some territories of Armenia in Syunik. Yes, it's to illegally enter the territory of another country. During Stalin, USSR invaded some different territories they invaded into Finland, I think. I'm not sure about Sweden, probably not, but still Soviet armies would often invade many republics, both in the beginning of this Bolshevik revolution by the late 10s, if I am to say it that way, 1910s, yes, by the end of 1910s, and by the beginning of the 20s of the 20th century.
Is giving freedom of speech. But now the Soviet Union didn't send in their troops. And this got people thinking. The next country to steer away from communism was Hungary. This country...
Well, to steer away, yeah, you could say so, is to separate. Yes, I think it's easy to understand from the context.
One of the most liberal communist states. The Hungarians even had a saying for it. Hungary is the happiest barrack in the Eastern Bloc.
Hungary is the happiest barrack in the Eastern Bloc. So a lot of good vocab. Like the Eastern Bloc, it was the former USSR. Yes, we had the Western Bloc, like the Western European countries, and we had the Eastern Bloc, like the USSR, the Soviet countries. Yes, well, of course, with Europe we had the US, it was the NATO in general, that was the Western Bloc, and in the East we had the Socialist and Soviet republics, that was the Eastern Bloc. And also barrack. Barrack is a military term, like soldiers live in barracks. When you call a country a barrack, it means this country is not free. It is totalitarian, meaning everything is totally controlled, yes? Or authoritarian, like there is some authority, some leader who is controlling the state. For instance, in USSR, Lenin was called Vozhd Narodov, the chiefman, the chief of the tribes, yes, of all the tribes or of all the peoples, yeah, of all the different peoples living in the USSR. And also, probably some of you know this, some of you might not. So we have liberalism, yeah, liberty, it's freedom. Yes, liberal means like respecting freedom. Like you can say what you want, you can do what you want if it is not against the law. I cannot kill someone, yes, because it's against the law, but I can put on a lipstick even if I'm a man, if I want to. That is liberal. Or I can elect someone who is not part of the current government, yes. And the opposite of liberalism is conservatism. Yes, to conserve is to keep as it is. To, for instance, when you put your ice cream in the freezer, you conserve it. You don't allow it to change. Yes, or if you keep a seed in some dark and cold place, you conserve it. You do not allow the seed to grow. Yes. So conservatism is like when people want to keep things as they are. Yes. All right, let's move on.
Which I'm told sounds even better in Hungarian. Mass demonstration.
How does it sound in
block,
Bulgarian?
which
Legvidamab barak a socialista lagerben. Okay, I don't
I'm
understand
told
it.
sounds even better in Hungarian.
Don't get
Mass
it.
demonstrations on March 15th of 1989 persuaded the Hungarian government to start negotiating with the new political...
Okay, mass demonstrations. Like, it's like masses. This was a very important term for the USSR in general and for collectivist politics. Like, when the individual, one person, is not important, but big groups are. So when big groups are important, it's a mass culture or mass groups, etc. Yes. So we had mass demonstrations, like a lot of people went there. Yes, came out. Then to persuade. Well, that's okay. To persuade is to make them. Yes, I pursued my teacher to talk about maybe some topic that the teacher didn't want to. So I convinced my teacher, or I made them. Yes. So in this case, it's like convincing, to convince, to persuade. It's like you don't do it by force, you just make them accept it, agree on it, right?
of 1989 persuaded the Hungarian government to start negotiating with the new political parties that were forming.
See, we heard already to bargain or bargaining, and now it's negotiating. Yes, so the government had to negotiate with new political parties. Yes, that were forming, that were being created in the country.
These negotiations included an overhaul of the legal code, establishment of negotiations included an
overhaul of the legal code. Overhaul, like you stop it. Yes, you stop it, and that's it. Overhaul of the legal code. Legal. The word legal is the root comes from a Latin word lex, meaning law. Yes, legal is something that relates to the law. So legal code is the set of rules or laws. Yes, it's a group of laws that controls how courts work, what is legal, what is illegal, etc. Yes, so it was stopped, the USSR legal code, and then they wanted to establish, to create. Yes, to establish is to create, to found.
Of the legal code, establishment of a constitutional court.
Constitutional court. Yes, like there is this system of courts in some places, in some countries. Like you have the lowest, yes, the normal court, which is sometimes called the court of the first, in Russian, for instance, первая инстанция, yes, of the first rank, or the first band, you could say. Then you have the second band court, or in some places it's like different, yes. Then you can have the third level, which is to if you want to try to change the decision of the court. Yes, maybe you think that the judge was not honest and the decision made by the other judge or judges is wrong. If you think it's wrong, you can go to this third level court. Sometimes it's called the appealing court, when to appeal is to change the decisions, yes, made by his colleagues. The court of appeals, yes, And in some places you can have the fourth level. However, the highest level is the constitutional court. If you want to really change something, you can try and go to the constitutional court. Again, to give you a real life example, if I think that, for instance, smoking weed or maybe producing porn should be legal, I can go to the constitutional court and claim, if I see some passages in the constitution which says the freedom of expression is very important, the individual is the center of our government, for instance. Yes, if I have some laws or some passages in the constitution, I can try to change some laws going to the constitutional court. Yes, that's the highest court, which talks about the constitution of the country. Normally, constitution is the highest or the supreme law of the country. Yes, all other codes, legal codes, you can have a criminal code, you can have a number of other codes, come from the constitution of the country, and they should not, ideally they should not contradict, the criminal rule should not go against the constitution. It should not contradict the constitution, right?
And allowing free elections. Ironically, many of the people who are eroding Hungary's democracy at the moment were part of those negotiations. General elections were held on March 24th, 1990, with Soviet forces ending their occupation a year later on June 19th. Just as with Poland, the Soviet Union did not take any overt action to stop Hungary.
Any overt action, any explicit action, yes, any, you could say, direct action. So this time the Soviet Union was very soft with all those
In
republics.
this process towards a freer society, the Hungarian government removed their border fence with Austria, opening the communist Hungarian border with the capitalist Austrian border, thus creating an opening in the Iron Curtain. For the first time in decades, people could now move relatively freely between the communist East and the capitalist West.
Yes. He said relatively. Another synonym would be comparatively. Yes, more or less. Yeah, freer.
Move relatively freely between the communist East and the capitalist West. Many people who lived in East Germany at the time took this opportunity and decided to cross the border to Austria and continue on to West Germany, where they were treated as full citizens. East Germany,
They were
which had
treated as full citizens. Yes, they were seen as, they were accepted as full citizens. Yeah, actually, the term treaty. It's like when you sign a treaty, it's like how you are going to treat each other, how you're going to relate to each other, yes, work with each other.
the official name of the German Democratic Republic, or simply GDR, found these recent events in Hungary very troubling.
Okay, let's skip this part. It's very
1950s.
interesting. I'll give you the link to this documentary. However, let's move
First,
on.
mass demonstration on November 17th, 1989, and the formation of various anti-communist movements. These movements demanded even more freedom.
These movements demanded even more freedoms. Yes, demanded. They wanted. It's to demand is not in English. It's not just to simply ask. You require it. You really want it. Yes, you say to the government, you have to do this. Yes, that is to demand. Okay. we can skip this a bit further, I think. Yeah, Ceausescu. This is a very interesting documentary. So, however, let's go to the collapse of the USSR. So at first, the USSR did not react in the old-fashioned way. They didn't bring in their forces into all those republics. So slowly, on the fringes of the USSR, yes, near the borders, yes, far from the center, all those different republics, they wanted independence. They started to make some, to organize some election processes, etc.
Where people could vote.
And then the USSR decided to hold a referendum. Yes.
Stable. But 1990 was the year where this would change.
1990.
It started with the Soviet Union allowing mostly free elections where people could vote for multiple parties. Rather,
so in USSR, the system was, there was one single party system. There was only one party allowed in the USSR. That was the Communist Party. Yes. So in the 1990, this multiple party system was allowed. Like you could be a Democrat, and the Democrats were allowed to form a party on their own. You could be a liberal, and create your own political party. So that was a very important shift or change in the USSR, right?
Only the communist parties.
So yes,
This
apart from
allowed the
these
various
communist parties, there were other parties allowed.
republics, which comprised the Soviet Union, to elect non-communist parties to their parliaments, resulting in a wide range of new parties being registered all over the Soviet Union. This was supposed to revitalize Soviet politics, believing that
To
competition
revitalize, that's a hard word. You can see it during your exams, IELTS, TOEFL, PTE maybe. So revitalize, to give life again, yes, to make it alive again. The root is a beautiful Latin word, vita, life, yes. So to revitalize, to bring life back, yes. When the plant is dying, you can revitalize it by pouring in some water, or maybe by changing the soil of the plant, yes. Okay.
result in a more efficient political system
Efficient,
that would
effective.
better represent the will of the people. What happened instead was that most people who were unhappy with the communist government voted en masse for independence movements.
En masse, it's a French expression. Yes, they voted en masse, meaning, again, it's about the masses. Yes, massive, meaning a lot of people. Yes, en masse, like the majority. Yes, huge masses of people voted against the red government or the red parties, the
Unhappy
communist
with the
parties.
communist government voted en masse for independence movements. This was most prominent in Lithuania. And
Most prominent, most visible, yes, most explicitly expressed or visible. Yes, it was most prominent in Lithuania.
movement won most of the seats in their parliament as part of the Communist Party, and thus they practically took over the party in Lithuania and Lithuania's
They
government.
took over the party. Yes, they took over. Like they had the control. Yes, they took the control. To take over is like to be in charge.
The day after the elections, the new Lithuanian Assembly declared itself independent from the USSR.
Assembly, that's another beautiful word. To assemble is to gather, yes, or to bring together. So in the political sense, assembly is the collecting, the coming together of a lot of individuals. Yes, they assemble, they come together to talk about something, to make some political decisions. Yes, and parliaments generally are assemblies. Yes, like different people come from all over the country to get together and to talk about some things. Yes, the National Assembly in many countries, you have a parliament. In some countries you have national assemblies. Yeah.
As a result, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics lost the Lithuanian Republic. But rather than sending in the Soviet army, like so many countries would have done,
See, in this context, rather than sending in the Soviet army, it's instead of sending in, yes, the Soviet army. Because in other contexts, rather can have a slightly different meaning. Yes, I would rather drink coffee instead of tea. Yes, I would prefer coffee.
USSR decided to implement an economic embargo on Lithuania.
Well, to implement, that's a term you can see in not only in political discussions but also in the area of grant projects, non-governmental organizations. Yes, to implement is to put to practice, to make it effective. Yes, so you can implement a new policy, you can implement an embargo, just as the USSR did. It's like to run it, to make it effective. Yes, a country can implement a set of new laws. Yes, lockdown was implemented all over the planet. Yes, throughout these past 2 years already, right? Yeah.
Troops already present in Lithuania didn't intervene, but they didn't leave either.
Yes, intervene. Yes, to intervene, like when two people are fighting and someone wants to intervene. It's like someone comes, stands in between and tries to change the situation. Yeah, so they did not intervene, means they did not went there. They did not oppress oppress the people, or they did not try to arrest people, etc. Yes, they just remained where they were. Yes.
The same elections, many other parts of the USSR also voted out the communist leaderships, such as Armenia, Estonia, Georgia, Latvia, and Moldova. Georgia declared independence on the 9th of April 1991, but the other four weren't declaring independence just yet. But by now people saw clearly that the Soviet Union really wasn't interfering. Not only did they let satellite countries erupt in protests, even within the regions of the Soviet
Union. Erupt, normally a volcano erupts. Yes, when there is fire, there is lava, the mountain is asleep, and then the volcano erupts. Yes, a lot of noise, a lot of fire, smoke. In this case, we talk about people. Yes, when people start protesting all over the country.
Union, there weren't a lot of crackdowns. Neither Lithuania.
Crackdown, yeah, crackdown. To crack down is like when you enter often without warning, without saying anything. You just swiftly, yeah, in a very fast way, you just come in and you suppress. Yes, with guns, with force. It's a crackdown. The police may crack down on some pubs for instance, during the lockdown. There were many crackdowns on the different pubs, cafeteria, like cafes, restaurants. The government wanted to be sure that these places are not packed with people. Yeah, so the entire government can crack down also
Nor the other
on
five
some things.
non-communist governments faced any military reprisal from the USSR. And as more and more people noticed that rebellions passed without a major backlash, more and more people...
Oh, major backlash. Backlash is like when you do something and there is some opposition to you. You go this way and there is this wave that stops you or even forces you to go back. That's a backlash. Yes. So there was no backlash from the central government.
A rebellion of their own. One region after the other erupted in rebellion.
Rebellion, yes, to rebel. To rebel is like to try to stage a revolution. Yes, to rebel is to uprise. Yes, one synonym of rebellion is uprising. When you protest against your government, when you try to change something in a very radical, serious way. Yeah.
Such as Azerbaijan, where the people destroyed fences and watchtowers along the border with Iran and overthrew the government in one town. Although here the Soviet army did violently crack down on protesters, which alienated the local communists and led them to unsuccessfully declare their own independence. Ukraine erupted in peaceful protests in the beginning of 1990. While the government did oblige the local population, such as decriminalizing certain religious practices. In their elections, people voted for new democratic parties. Tensions slowly rose with the Soviet leadership, as Ukraine recalled all of its soldiers fighting in Soviet conflicts.
In this context, to recall, yes, to recall can mean to remember. Do you recall the name of this girl? Yeah. Do you recall that meeting? Yes, we held last month. In this context, Ukraine recalled. Ukraine asked to come back its soldiers from all over the USSR. Yes.
Declared its economic sovereignty and declared its goal of independence.
So Ukraine declared its economic sovereignty. It's like its independence. Yes, its economic independence.
Many other things. While not officially independent, they were clearly on track to do so. In Tajikistan,
they were on track. They were on their way, yes, to the freedom. They were on track. Okay, the track is the way, yeah?
Turned violent as people torched government buildings, shops, and businesses amidst a call for economic and political reform. In Kyrgyzstan, ethnic national groups clashed with each other over the division of land from former collective farms, which were now being privatized. 300 people died.
Yeah, that's very sad. Privatize, that's an important term when we talk of USSR and socialist or collectivist politics. In collectivist states, everything, there is no sense of property rights for the individuals. Yes, you do not own your house. Often, like they would appropriate, they would come into your house and they would say, well, you have 7 rooms in your house or 5, but you are 3 in this big house, so we are giving away those 3 rooms to these poor families coming from the villages. Yes, and you could do nothing. Yes, because that was the dictatorship of the proletariat. Yes, so to privatize, to make something private, for instance, the factories, lots of buildings, like everything belonged to the state. Yes, Very rarely some people were allowed to have shops, or you could bribe, yes, you could give illegal money to some officials and keep something for yourself. But generally in USSR there were no privacy, no private property. There was no private property. Even your life did not really belong to you. It belonged to the state. Yes, for the sake of the world revolution, for the sake of like communist or socialist ideals, you should have been happy to sacrifice yourself, to work overnight, yes, to give voluntary classes that were not really voluntary. If you disagreed, you would lose your job, for instance, right? This is how the USSR functioned, right? So to privatize is to allow me to own my own house, yes. We could actually talk about the privatization of the of our bodies, actually, when there is this type of communist or socialist, fascist, nationalist state which says, you individual, you are nothing, even your body belongs to me. The privatization may actually start from your own mind and from your own body, right? And then from belongings, like, does this smartphone belong to me, or this belongs to the state, and the state may come and take it from me whenever it wants. Or this apartment, like if I have an extra room, sometimes people would, they were forced to live in a small room, and even the dining room, yes, would be given to a poor family. So you would have to make an apartment from your single room. That's how this system worked. Yeah, it's a bit sad.
With the fringes of the Soviet Union becoming less unified, the USSR desperately tried to keep the country together. To speed up the economic growth of the Union, they launched the 500 Days program, which sought to reinvigorate the Soviet Union to show the people.
Reinvigorate, that's a synonym to the word to revitalize. Yes, we've seen that earlier. There are a number of other words, interesting vocabulary in here. So, unified. Well, uni, that's a Latin word. Again, it means one. To unify literally means to make one. Yeah, to bring together. To sometimes unite. Yeah, that's the same term, to unify, to unite, make one. Yeah. All right. Desperately, hopelessly. Yes, without hope.
Becoming less unified, the USSR desperately tried to keep the country together. To speed up the economic growth of the Union, they launched the 500 Days program.
So, yeah, let's have desperately as part of our vocab for the lesson, desperately. And then to speed up, actually that's in the spirit of those international English exams. To speed up, a very good synonym to this word is to accelerate. Yes, to accelerate is to make faster or to speed up. Okay?
To reinvigorate the Soviet Union,
Yeah,
to show the
reinvigorate.
people and governments of the Union that the USSR was worth keeping around. This plan was meant to create the groundwork for transitioning the economy to become more competitive.
Oops, sorry.
They would create a competitive market similar to capitalism, with mass privatization of businesses, stop controlling the prices of products, join the global economy.
So in USSR, everything was controlled by the state. like how much does the factory produce? What does the factory produce? Who is in charge of that? You couldn't, had no freedom. Yes, everything was decided by the state, even the prices of goods. Even like what can you wear? What is okay for a Soviet woman and a Soviet man to wear? Yes, even fashion. Everything was under total control and censorship. Okay? So it was not a lot of fun from those, from this perspective. So there are young people who idealize the USSR. There is some melancholia, some regret. Yes, some people are like, oh, it was such a beautiful country. There were bright sides, but there were dark sides as well. It was a totalitarian regime. Your life was in total control, especially before Gorbachev. Yes.
More power away from the
Yes.
centralized governments and towards the local republics. As part of this, a second initiative was to wholly transform the Soviet Union away from centralization and oppression and towards a federation where every region
So, some good terms. To centralize is like to unify around one center. In USSR, this center was Moscow. Moscow controlled everything. For instance, in the Republic of Armenia, like we have metro stations. Yes, we have our own small metropolitan, but we couldn't get that built without the permission of Moscow. So Moscow controlled everything. You had very little freedom as a Soviet Republic. Always in all those important questions, the agreement of Moscow was very, very important. Yeah, your hands were tied otherwise. So to centralize, yes, and to decentralize, to give a lot of freedom to the fringes or to other republics, yes, which were not part of the center, to decentralize. Yeah.
from centralization and oppression and towards a federation where every region was given equal rights.
So a federation. See, USSR is Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Yes. Then instead of having union, which was centralized, yes, it was union. It was one single body. Like if you have a union, you have one brain. Yes, that was Moscow. Your hand doesn't have the same rights, yes, and your hand is not seen as important as your brain or your stomach, yes. This is how union worked. So some parts or some republics were seen as more important than others. Yeah. In case of federation, ideally, in theory, all the parts should have equal opportunities, equal rights. You don't have to have one single supreme assembly in Moscow. You will have local assemblies which will have equal rights to that of Moscow, right?
And equal say in the affairs of the Union, and where every person, regardless of ethnicity or creed, were given equal rights. It was hoped.
So again, in USSR, there was this interesting notion of scientific atheism. Yes, you were not free. You didn't have equal rights as a Christian or as a non-atheist, for instance. Yes, you were oppressed. So let's move forward.
That the people would no longer protest for independence, as a federation would allow each part to govern mostly independently.
So again, in federation, each part would decide on its own. Do they want to have their own constitution? Do they want to change their flag or anthem, etc., etc.?
Felt that they had a say in the matter. The Soviet Union decided to ask its people if this was what they wanted. They held a nationwide referendum on March 17th, 1991. The referendum asked people, do you consider it necessary to preserve the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic as a renewed federation of equal sovereign republics?
So do you want to preserve it? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to keep it alive? Yes, do you want to preserve it? So this was the question asked in the referendum. Okay.
It will fully guarantee the rights and freedoms of all nationalities. While the referendum was boycotted in some regions, almost 150 million people showed up to vote. Over 75% of people voted in favor of turning the Soviet Union into a federation. This wasn't the only referendum taking place that day, with various regions adding questions on whether they should become independent. Russia, for example, added a question about whether they wanted to have a president representing the Russian part of the Soviet Union. The Russian people agreed, and in June 1991, Boris Yeltsin became the first president of Russia. By now, the Soviet Union was facing separatism across the nation and was ready to
Separatism, that's a very political term. To separate, yes, is to disrupt this union, to make separate. So separatism is when one part of the union wants to have its own independence. For instance, in Spain, yes, there is this movement of Catalonians, yes, or the Catalonia region. They want to have their own separate state, yes, country. And in Caucasus, we have this problem with Nagorno-Karabakh, which is regarded as separatist because it was part of Azerbaijan, and then it wanted to move away from Azerbaijan. So this is another form of separatism, like when one part of one country doesn't want to be part of this whole country. From the viewpoint of the country, that is separatism, yes? Something negative, like we want to keep our country together, yes? So from the perspective of the center, that's something negative, yes? Separatism.
Power
to separate
various regions of the USSR. And this was going to go into effect on August 20th, with the signing of the new Union Treaty, which would turn the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics into the Union of Sovereign States. This would hopefully keep the Union together, but there were many in the government who didn't like this idea at all. From the defense minister to the vice president to the head of the Soviet secret police. And so they tried to take over the government in a coup to bring back the unity of the...
Coup, yes, C-O-U-P. Coup, you can see this word sometimes when, for instance, the military, the army of the country tries to take the power. That's called a military coup. One such coup happened in Turkey some years ago, in USSR we had this coup. Maybe if this coup didn't happen, maybe this referendum would have worked, and there would be some form of some federation, yes, of independent republics. I think Putin is probably trying to recreate either USSR or this type of freer union, maybe taking into consideration learning from the experience of Europe. Yeah.
USSR.
So there was this
Their
coup.
goals were to remove Gorbachev from power, return centralized power back to Moscow, and to use military force to keep the Soviet Union together. Gorbachev was on holiday, so the rebellious army put him under holiday house arrest. They announced
So,
the
okay,
end of
let's keep it more or less short. Actually, what happened, Boris Yeltsin went, actually the coup authors, like the army, the head of the secret army of USSR, which was very corrupt, they killed and they maimed the lives of many innocent people. So they staged this coup, yeah, to stage a coup. They staged it and they thought that the people would support them because the people, they thought, wanted a new Stalin, they wanted a new Iron Hand to control everything. They were wrong. The people stood against the coup, actually. So it failed. After that, the fringes of what remained of USSR, they were like, well, we don't want this kind of a center for ourselves. We don't want to be part of this type of country or union, yes, where they have military coups. So some people blame Gorbachev for the collapse of the USSR. They're like, well, this bloody Gorbachev, and it's very popular inside the USSR countries. In my family, for instance, my parents, both my father and my mother, they are anti-Gorbachev. They blame him, they curse him. But I think this myth was also created by Putin to show that freedom is dangerous. If you are moving towards freedom, you are moving towards chaos. So this is why I think Gorbachev is seen as a negative figure, because they want to market freedom as anarchy in the worst sense of the term. Yes, because there is this ideology of political anarchy, which is different. However, so yes, some people say it's Gorbachev's fault that the USSR collapsed, and others say that it's the fault of this coup, and it's the fault of not giving the necessary amount of freedom as fast as it was needed, right? Some people are saying that the USSR failed because Gorbachev did not give enough freedom fast enough. Other people are saying, no, on the contrary, Gorbachev gave too much freedom at once. This is why we failed, right? So you should watch some documentaries and draw your own conclusions, okay? So let's wrap it up. Maybe just have a look at our vocab, okay? Politics, that's a very interesting topic. All right, so to flourish is to prosper, yes? Then we have conditions, situations. Fringes. What are the fringes? Actually, I can ask you, you try to remember, okay? This will stimulate your brain a bit. What are the fringes? You can write down in the comments, okay? To bargain. What does it mean to bargain with someone? What is a satellite state? There is a state and there is a satellite state. What is it? Can you give me a synonym for desperately? What synonym can you give me for speed up? Yeah, speeding up or... And we have heard the word revitalize, yeah, to revitalize the economy. And then we've heard another word, and I said that, well, this can work as the synonym of revitalize. One little hint for this last one: the root of this synonym is vigor. Yeah, that's a rare word. We don't use it much in modern English. Vigor. Okay. So that's it, folks. Thank you for bearing with me. This is my first stream with a multi-streaming platform. So forgive me for the beginning of the vid. And if you'd like to support me, like all this content is free of charge. I also teach English privately. So if you'd like to take even one or a couple of private English lessons with me, you're most welcome. Also, those living in Armenia, I invite you to donate. I'll be happy to accept your donations, for instance, via IDRAM. Yes, if you'd like to support me, please contact me. You can just support like with 500 or 1000 drams or much more. Normally, 1 hour costs 6,600 drams. Yes, 1 hour of my lesson. I sell it for 6,600 drams. 40 minutes is 4,400 drams. Yes. In dollars, 1 hour is $15. 50 minutes is $13. 40 minutes is $11, right? So you're welcome to donate, and you're welcome to take some private lessons with me to show your appreciation and support. And of course, likes, comments, and shares help me a great deal. So I invite you to behave socially on social platforms. Yes, interact with me through my content, comment, like, and share it. Okay, thank you, and have a great day, everyone. All right, see you next time.